afternoon, everyone. A Monday edition of On Cue coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the SR 1029 FM, the Game Remote Studios. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Hope everyone had a wonderful sports weekend and everyone stayed out of trouble. I know you did, and I hope you're enjoying your Monday in March already, the second 2026, as we'll break down the world of sports. Got about an hour plus to play with on this Man Up Monday, or as we like to just dub it, a Man Up Lunes Mentiroso Manolo Logo de Radio edition of On Cue. And the reason we call it that is because we got to call out the BS takes. Now, we had a very busy weekend with the NBA, March Madness right around the corner. You got spring training, and the NFL just clearly never sleeps. It never stops and it never sleeps. NFL heavy. We'll mix it on NBA. How about my Knicks yesterday? Absolutely roasting San Antonio. I mean, let's just forget all of a sudden that the Spurs are, 43-16. Well, now 43-17. The Knicks only put up a $114, held them to 89. Here we go. Bridges with 25. And how about that? So we'll get into a little NBA. But as I mentioned, the NFL, it just never, ever sleeps. And it's one of the reasons that the NFL is pretty much at the forefront. A lot of movement with teams right now, knowing that the draft is right around the corner. What are NFL teams doing? They're trying to figure out ways to save money. They are trying to figure out ways to do a little cost cutting, right? So you saw that came down on the wire, a couple stories, which I know for the Commanders fans and those that would just basically troll me nonstop, i.e. the Bunker Boys, when it came to Washington and their cornerback, Marshawn Lattimore. Listen, it had to be done. I mean, here's a player that constantly got beat deep over the top, blown coverages. So it does appear that Washington will release the veteran cornerback. They will save about 18.5. And look, Lattimore is not a horrible corner. He's not, but he's not very good anymore, if that kind of makes sense, right? I mean, now you got a couple of starters. If you're Washington, you got Amos and you got the other kid, the second-year draft pick, San Francisco, again, that they can build upon. So Washington starting to understand if they're going to compete in the NFC East, they need to strengthen their defense. And then I thought a big move, the Texans are acquiring running back David Montgomery in a trade with the Lions. And that's pretty much because we never knew about the status of some of these running backs for the Houston Texans. I mean, we talked about it pretty much all season long. They lacked depth. It was just unfortunate. They flat out lacked depth. And they needed to kind of go with that running back by committee. Now, I like Montgomery. I think Montgomery is a very good back. Obviously, he was, a little more disposable, right? But if you look at the Houston Texans and their running back position, because you never knew what was going to happen with Joe Mixon, and then you had Woody Marks as well, and Woody Marks, had a couple of, right about a $190 carries. Not a bad player. No Joe Mixon. Because of the health of Joe Mixon, they had to go out and make a move for Montgomery. And Montgomery's a good back. Montgomery's a really good back. Here's a running back that's been in the league close to 7-8 years. He's had a couple seasons over 1,000 yards. A little different makeup last year with the Detroit Lions, the way their offense was predicated. I mean, you sit there and you've got Gibbs, they were moving around with St. Brown as well with some pitches here and there. That was a team that's going to throw the football first and foremost. But I like this move by the Houston Texans. I do, because they're solidifying that backfield. They also traded their right tackle to the Browns, so they've been busy. The Chiefs, now here you go. Kansas City, they restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract. They're trying to save a little money. So what do? They released Jawan Taylor in a cap-cutting move. So right now, you're starting to see Kansas City that went through a very bad season, didn't win the AFC West, didn't make the playoffs, lost Patrick Mahomes, still waiting to see what's going to go on with the future Hall of Fame tight end and Travis Kelce. They need to save money. So right now, this move basically frees up more cap space, right? Because you release your linebacker, Tranquil, your tight end, Gray. You restructured the contracts of Chris Jones, which had to be done. Also, your center, Humphrey. And now you've got 57 million to play with. Because I should say they entered the offseason, pardon me, more than 57 over the cap. So now it's a different animal. And obviously, the big move, restructuring Patrick Mahomes, that gives them much needed flexibility. Much needed flexibility. There are some rumors out there that if we take it a step back right now and talk Philadelphia Eagles football for a second, we like to kind of go up and down the up and down 95 with some of these teams, but there's a couple rumors out there that the Dallas Cowboys, who need a substantial amount of help on the defensive side of the football, they might start to try to pull in some of these free agents. Oh, by the way, some of them who are with or will be or would have been with the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to give you a list of some of these players as well. And the one that stands out is Nakobe Dean. And I saw that the Mothership's Jeremy Fowler reported that right now he's a green dot player in the middle of the defense, right? Think about that. Think about that for a moment. Also, don't know the future of Dallas Goedert. The Cowboys are going to keep monitoring offensive players, defensive players. They have to solidify their pass rush. Now, there's several Eagles that would fit the bill right now for the Dallas Cowboys. Their edge rusher, Jalen Phillips, Michael Carter, your slot corner, and then Reed Blankenship, the safety. Now, of the three, Carter is the only one under contract. And I think they're going to cut him because, listen, he doesn't have that role because Cooper DeJean right now owns the starting slot cornerback spot. Phillips makes sense as well if you can't make that blockbuster, that big splash, right? So these are names that are going to get moved. These are, players, some free agents that teams are not going to sign. They don't want to re-sign them. And then you have the New York Giants. And right now, interesting, because the New York Giants broke the bank. The New York Giants broke the bank when they made a big splash a couple years ago. And they were like, hey, we need to figure out a way to fix our defense. And you saw some of the moves that they made in free agency. Now, if you fast forward to the thought right now with the New York Football Giants, think about what they did last season and who they signed, i.e. Paulson Adebo. That was a big move. That was a big, big move. And also Javon Holland. So right now, the thought is that they might be in the play for Eric Stokes, who's a very good, under-the-radar cornerback. He's been feast or famine, up and down, but the up has been really, really good. Now, I also think you got to be careful here because the Giants still have a damn good player in Cordell Flott, who had a breakout season in 2025. So the Giants are definitely going to go defense in the offseason, okay? And we know the other thing is, I don't know what's going to happen with Jermaine Illuminor. And now there's some thought that the Giants will not re-sign Wan'Dale Robinson. And I think that would be a huge mistake. I really do. Now, the question is, how much do you want to pay for like a 6'1", 6'2", $175 corner, right? Who's when we're talking about run support. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of news breaking left and right with the NFL because it just doesn't sleep. Later on in the week, we're going to start to take a look at some of these teams, some of these divisions respectively, and kind of their need, the upgrades, if you will. Offseason needs. The draft is right around the corner. And I don't know, this was a great story. I was kind of chuckling with this story over the weekend that a team basically told Fernando Mendoza, hey, man, try to get arrested. Try to get arrested so your stock will drop. Listen, the Raiders, if you're kind of reading between the lines, Are the Raiders starting to get a little cold feet here? Or are they just doing it to do it? Like the Raiders hold the number one pick in the draft. And right now, we all believe that it's going to be Indiana Hoosiers quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Led Indiana to the college football championship, right? He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He is the favorite to be taken first. But it's interesting because there's reports coming out of Vegas telling multiple NFL outlets that, listen, well, even if they draft this kid, they don't want him to start week one. They don't want to go into the 2026 season with a rookie quarterback. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want Fernando Mendoza. It might now open up the door to leverage where you have a couple teams that, all right, let's kind of tempt you to trade the first pick. And that means if I'm the Jets, I gotta be in the mix here. I have to. I think if you're the New York Jets, it's paramount that you figure out a way. If you can make a bold splash, a bold move, and you have to give up a little bit of the war chest to go get a player that you believe is a franchise quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, then you have to do it. And a lot of these teams right now that are borderline bridge to no franchise quarterback, they got to start feeling out the Raiders. They have to gauge the Raiders' interest to see if they're interested in trading the top pick, or you're going to hold on to it. Now, what's interesting too is that the Jets GM, Darren Muji, basically dropped a clear hint Sunday. Again, if you read between the lines, that the pick's available, then the team's going to be interested. And I don't know how much say Tom Brady's going to have here, to be quite honest, because Brady is the minority owner. I believe he's going to play a key role in this team's offensive rebuild. Um, and he's also said, look, I'm a fan of this kid. Now, Pete Carroll decides I'm going to bring in Geno Smith. Geno Smith had a horrible season. They went 3-14, and it ultimately cost Pete Carroll his job. So, again, are you starting the season with Geno Smith? And I don't know if you sell it to the fan base. I don't believe you can do that. The Jets hold the second and 16th pick in the first round of this year's draft, which is, I would say, about a month and almost, what is it, April, almost 2 months away. Raiders desperately need a quarterback. So it's going to be it's going to be fascinating to watch what happens over the next several weeks. And with the combine going right now, you're going to see some players, the stock goes up, the stock drops. That's just how it is. You'll listen to some of these pundits talk about some of these players. Everyone was kind of giving it to Adam Schefter because he was kind of tinkering with players' 40 time to kind of appease, one of the agents. And we can get into that a little bit later on as well. So a lot of NFL. We'll mix in a little NBA. Got some news and notes around the diamond as well. We'll get you fired up. Started on a Monday edition, 3:30. Don't forget, we're also on SR 1029 FM The Game. Part of the AUDACY app, Coastal Sports Digital Network. Download the app and you can search. You'll catch us during the week, Monday to Friday. I know sometimes we fire off a little early. We also have a couple of new episodes of Overseas Dimes, the Hoops podcast dropping, as well as Double Drop Boxing. We'll get into the Mayweather debacle later on the week as well. But your comments on the other side, don't forget the hashtag on Q. Quick timeout, 3:30 on a Monday edition of On Q on this 2nd of March, 2026. We'll come back. We'll reset the table. NFL, NBA, we'll mix in a little baseball as well on this Monday. All right, 3:30 on the East Coast on a Monday edition of On Cue. Don't forget, we're powered by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Pliable, also fresh roasted coffee. Check out the show notes on Q20. Man chimes in, a little peekaboo like the Bunker Boys, and then he says, you said the three-letter that we don't care about. We talking NBA? I mean, listen, playoffs are right around the corner, postseason right around the corner. You got March Madness, you got the NBA. How can you not talk about what's going on in the NBA right now? Come on. What are we doing here? That's a huge win by the Knicks. That was a huge win by the Knicks. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Spurs. They can't get over the hump against Detroit or Cleveland, but they won 4 out of 5. Come on. They're locking in defensively, and the Knicks find themselves a game and a half back of the Boston Celtics. Oh, by the way, for the Sixers fans, Embiid will miss more time. What else is new? It's a light night, by the way, madman, in the association. You got 4 games on the docket. Give me a break, will you? Come on. Just a little bit. A little charity, will you? A little equity in the bank. Sixers got throttled, absolutely throttled by the Celtics. I mean, that game, look, they lost that game by 16, but they couldn't do anything in the fourth quarter. They could not do anything in the fourth quarter. And listen, Maxi's been playing at a all-world level. Now, I'm not going to put him in the MVP conversation, but he's having himself a hell of a season. He's averaging career high 29. You're not going to have Embiid for the next couple games. Edgecombe is starting to come on as a young player, which is always something you like. And then the role players had to contribute. Barlow contribute. Drummond contributed. But still, right now, the Philadelphia 76ers, 33 and 27, they're not going anywhere. But I like what I saw yesterday from the Knicks defensively. I got to give Detroit a lot of credit. I did not think the Pistons were going to be this good. The Detroit Pistons are 45 and 14. They won 3 straight, 8 out of 10. They can score, they can rebound, they can run the floor. They play lights out defense, and they've been absolutely on fire. Now, they stubbed their toe against the Spurs. Other than that, they won, I think, 8 out of 9. Cunningham, Harris, they went on the road. Cade Cunningham, I believe when it's all said and done, he will be the MVP. I really do. I know it's easy to throw in the Jokers, the Lucas, and the like, but Cade Cunningham to me has just played just phenomenal basketball. Phenomenal basketball. And if you watch the Pistons a couple seasons ago, they were a laughingstock. But Robinson is a good player. Thompson is a good player. They're getting, think about this. How crazy is this? The Detroit Pistons, you want to talk about having the lean sometimes on veteran guys. Remember the albatross of a contract the Philadelphia 76ers paid Tobias Harris? Tobias Harris is giving them good minutes, good production, and he's giving them veteran leadership. And yesterday was clearly the case with 23 points. So the NBA heating up. We would get into the NBA. Got some NFL thoughts, as I mentioned, too. What do we got there? Sarge chiming in, Q, from Delaware, from Wilmington, Delaware. Q, absolutely no way. I don't care if we start a rookie quarterback, but there's no way the Raiders should trade this pick. I don't believe they will. I don't believe the Raiders will. I think if the Raiders, that's malpractice. If the Raiders decide we're not drafting Fernando Mendoza, you have to draft this kid. What are you trying to sell the fan base on? Geno Smith? You can't. There's absolutely no way you can do that. You cannot sell the fan base on Geno Smith for another season. You got a young offensive mind, new head coach, right? You want to get a young quarterback in there. You have to. Tom in Summers Point, Q, did you hear any thought of Ertz coming back to the Philadelphia Eagles? Listen, he's 35. He tore his ACL. He's hitting free agency. He's rehabbing. I don't know what the hell the Eagles are doing with the tight end spot. I don't. I really don't. Goddard, you got a bunch of players that are unsigned. And I don't know, do you bring in Zach Ertz at a low cost, high reward / mentor, right? because again, that's great, if you're all for nostalgia. But the Philadelphia Eagles, like that's not moving the needle. If this is a team that is coming off the Super Bowl, coming off a Super Bowl win, then that's different. You want, if you think you're going to stockpile, and why not? We bring him in. Maybe he gets his 35 receptions, 600 yards, and a couple TDs, and he has an opportunity to win another ring. That's different. But right now, you've got age, injury, crappy blocking, and the Eagles have pretty much been relatively silent, right, ahead of free agency. So I don't know. Goddard's a good tight end. He's a good tight end, but listen, Dallas Goedert's not going to return with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles know how important this offseason is. I cannot overstate how important this offseason is, because if you look around the landscape of the NFC, Dallas is eventually going to clean up their defense, and you like to think they're going to figure it out. Washington came back down to earth last season, dealt with the injuries to Jaden Daniels. The Giants have a young ascending quarterback. They bring in Harbaugh. They need to fix their defense. They've got some weapons. They're going to be more competitive, at least within the division. And then you've got the Bears, the Rams, the 49ers, Detroit, Green Bay. Oh, by the way, the defending Super Bowl champ, the Seattle Seahawks. The Philadelphia Eagles might get lost in the sauce here. Honestly, they might get lost in the sauce. There's no guarantee that this team next season, as presently constructed, ripping off 11, 12, 13 wins. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. From what we saw, from what we've seen, you still have issues with the quarterback, Sirianni, bringing in another offensive coordinator, Jalen Hurts. This is a huge offseason. I really can't overstate this, because the NFC East is going to get better. Eventually, these divisions become like what we're seeing with the NFC North, the AFC West. The teams that have been, what, for the last several years, they're going to get draft picks. They're going to hit. They're going to bring in free agents. They're going to make the right moves. They might fire coaches, bring in the right coaches, and they eventually become better football teams. So there's, let's not write it in right away that the Philadelphia Eagles are winning 13, 14 games. Let's not do that right now. It's very hard to compete in the NFL. It is. I just feel like we have this conversation ad nauseum. If you look at the win totals, just even projected 2026, if we want to go that route, right? If you're looking at 10.5, Seattle, Buffalo, Baltimore, San Fran, 10.5. I'll give you the teams right now, 2026. I mean, it's pretty clear. There might be one or two surprises, but Seattle, not a surprise. Buffalo, not a surprise. Baltimore, not a surprise. San Francisco, if they're healthy, not a surprise. KC, with a healthy Mahomes, making the right moves. Yeah, because they're the Chiefs. They've been there before. This is just from a betting standpoint, the odds makers, right? 10.5. The Rams, 10.5. Philly, 10.5. Cincinnati, if they clean up the defense, you're still bringing back Joe Burrow, 10.5. Houston, 10.5. Tampa Bay, 10.5. I can live with all that. Denver, New England, Jacksonville, the Bears, maybe they take a step back, 9.5 to 10-ish. But then you look at the lowest projected teams, Arizona, no quarterback. Miami, no quarterback. And right now, the Raiders, no quarterback. Then you've got teams lumped in between. Jets, Giants, right? Detroit will be a good team. I mentioned Green Bay already. Chicago, we talked about. Minnesota lumped in with the Giants and the Jets, the Raiders. Arizona, Miami. I'm trying to think who else. The Colts, maybe a 8-9 win team. Who knows if they decide to bring back and sign Daniel Jones. Point being, right now, you're not looking at the board and you're saying that the Philadelphia Eagles are the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year. It's Seattle plus 800 because they're defending Super Bowl champs. They got the best defense in the league, and they're actually going to get stronger and better. So Am I making a move to bring back a veteran mentor who's a good guy and a nice player, had a wonderful career because of nostalgia? Or am I trying to win some friggin' football games and figure out the depth at the tight end possession? To figure out what's going to happen with AJ Brown, to figure out, can we fix this offensive line and get Saquon cooking again? So to answer your question, nostalgia is great. That doesn't win you championships. There's nothing wrong with going out if you can do it, and it's almost like a little afterthought. Yeah, bring him back for the run. I mean, you don't really see that a lot in the NFL. And as I mentioned, Ertz was a pros pro. Goddard's a talented but yet inconsistent tight end. And you're seeing right now how some of these offenses in the NFL utilize the tight end. The Eagles, it was almost like underutilized because they just didn't have any rhyme or reason to their offense. And it's one of the reasons they got bounced early. It's one of the reasons they were never able to get off the mat offensively to start the season. I mean, it's just these are very noticeable weaknesses with some of these teams. The Cowboys defensively, the Giants in the secondary. The Giants still have to get a sustained pass rush, or they're not going to be a competitive football team. Listen, Burns is an all-pro. He's a great player. But you got to give the guy a little help. Thibodeau, where they drafted Thibodeau, top 5, 6. He hasn't played like that guy. He came on a little bit, but as I mentioned, listen, ultimately, you need some consistency here, man. You need consistency. And if I'm not seeing it, if I'm not getting consistency, then that's a problem, especially from where I drafted you. Then I have to decide if I'm going to go in a different direction. Zach Berman reported Eagles and Browns camp. A.J. Brown returning from the combine with a sense of the market. Eagles maintain a high asking price. Multiple AFC teams are interested. A seller's market could generate, not the situation brimming with animosity. Eagles staffers rave about Brown. Eagles' early conversations about the new offense are happening as if Brown will be in it. So again, read between the lines. It doesn't look like A.J. Brown's going anywhere. Look, headache, absolutely. Can he flat out play? Absolutely. So again, risk to reward, risk to reward. Kevin says, Q, what do you think about Lawrence? Do you think the Giants move him? Nope. I think right now that the Giants look at Dexter Lawrence as untouchable, and they will probably want a ridiculous amount of return on their investment. Now, Dexter Lawrence had a down year. Dexter Lawrence was banged up. Dexter Lawrence seemed disinterested at times. I know that he was also doubled and at times triple teams. This is a year plus removed from his all-pro season. So I think Dexter Lawrence maybe is a little reinvigorated with the fact that they hired John Harbaugh, that they brought in a new defensive coordinator in Denard Wilson. I think you have to be high on Dexter Lawrence. He can be a game wrecker. But if the Giants actually entertain putting him on the block, then yeah, they're going to want a first-round draft pick in return. I mean, you have to. Dexter Lawrence is a great player. He just had a down year. See, Okereke was a nice move a couple of seasons ago. He's going to be a cap casualty. Burns is an all-pro. Thibodeau, he's got to stay healthy, and he's been a little inconsistent. McFadden banged up, right? And inconsistent. So the Giants need to address the linebacker position. They really do. Aside from Burns, you need guys that can get to the ball carrier and also get to the quarterback, and also their edge and their pass rushers. And that's something that hasn't been there consistently. But when Dexter Lawrence is on, he's better. He's arguably one of the best defensive tackles. You can almost argue, if not the best defensive tackle in the NFL. But he's also been banged up. I know he played in 17 games last year. He missed 5 games in 2024. He had 9 sacks, though, in 12 games. He had a half a sack last season. So I can't go, look at every single defensive play. And I know Kevin will want me to, but I'm telling you right now, Can he get back to the Dexter Lawrence of a couple seasons ago? Sure, I believe so. And I also think right now with the new defensive coordinator bringing in Hardball, and again, it's all about the culture, and it'll be about the scheme. They want to be able to get to the quarterback. They're going to have to be able to get to the quarterback because the teams that win in the NFL get to the quarterback. New England got to the quarterback. Denver got to the quarterback. The Rams got to the quarterback. And Seattle certainly got to the quarterback. All right, 346, quickie timeout. Fast approaching 4 o'clock. A lot more NFL. On the other side, got some NBA comments. We'll read them off as well. Keep it locked in. Monday edition of On Cue. All right, fast approaching 4 o'clock, Monday edition of On Cue. Let me get to more of these comments. Mark and Wallingford chimes in Q. What's the story about Scheffner? I saw that he was kind of tinkering with the 40 time of one of the players. So his report on Carnell Tate's 40-yard dash time has kind of left some people, eh. So think about it. The 40 is pretty much everything at the draft, or the draft combine, I should say, right? Because now you got all this technology, the accuracy, the record time. Here we go. So Schefter drew a lot of criticism, pissed off a lot of people. He was reporting the 40-yard dash time of one of the players I would love the Giants to maybe look into, and that's Carnell Tate, explosive wide receiver from Ohio State, citing the slightly more favorable numbers measured by NFL teams over the underwhelming official mark given by the league. So he finished within the 4.45, 4.47 range, according to a bunch of NFL executives and GMs. According to Scheffner, which offered considerably different time, which was right around 4.52. Now, the reason this kind of raised eyebrows is that, he's doing it to appeal to Tate's agent, who is, oh, by the way, Drew Rosenhaus. So I got to give a positive spin to a piss poor 40 time. I mean, this is what the rat ship does, right? This is what they do. Never a dull moment. Look, discrepancies are always there. But it's funny because Scheffner didn't report any similar cases regarding the team measure times of other players, varying from the official measurements. So, as we like to say, do that what you will. Joe D in Summers Point also chiming in. Q, I did not see this, but I could be wrong. But did you see that the YouTuber that does a lot of the Eagles content, doesn't he know AJ Brown personally? I know of who you're speaking. I forget his name. I think it's like Eagle Al, right? But I guess he went on his pod and said that AJ Brown wants to be traded. But again, just because you want something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Ultimately, you can want all you want if you're a player to get traded. Team doesn't have to bend. Team doesn't have to break. I don't have to bend over and sit there and say, yeah, okay, fine, we're going to trade you. And a lot of what you're going to hear too, especially when players are disgruntled, franchises are going to speak glowingly of some of these players because they know they're going to try to jack up the value. That's all that is. They're going to jack up the value. Franchise chimes in. Q, how much stock do you put into these pundits with their draft analysis? I mean, look, I don't sit there and watch film like these guys do, but I also think a lot of these draft gurus, these talking heads, they have relationships with a lot of these coaches. They have relationships with player agents. And I think sometimes that kind of skews their opinion of some of these players, to be quite honest with you. Like, I believe Fernando Mendoza is arguably and easily the best quarterback in the draft. Now, I don't know if it's saying a lot because it's a weak draft class when it comes to the quarterbacking position. And I know that Joe Klatt, who's a pretty credible guy, he's got Fernando Mendoza, pretty much your top offensive player in the draft. Now, you would suspect if a quarterback's going to be the top overall draft pick, usually they are the best offensive player on the board, right? I don't have a comp to Fernando Mendoza. I like the kid. I watch enough of Indiana to think he can play, but Saturdays are different than Sundays, as we all know. And if there's this report, and who knows where it's coming out or where it's leaking, that the Raiders are cold on the kid, maybe they're doing it just to draw teams in to think of, okay, what can we possibly get? You know, you want the number one draft pick. We want a boatload. We want an overhaul, right? So that's one of the reasons that they're doing this. So we can sit there all we want and talk about rumors, the relationship he's got with Brady, and Brady wants him. They don't want to start him week one. I just feel as though you're bringing in a Hall of Fame quarterback to oversee a lot. And arguably the greatest quarterback of this generation. You can argue the greatest quarterback in NFL history. He has clout, okay? If I'm the Raiders, I don't need to make it public, but behind closed doors, I can pretty much hold firm. Because to me, I'm going to keep that pick. And I think the reason that they also hired Clint Kubiak took this job was on the notion, we've got the number one draft pick, we're drafting a quarterback. Yeah, let's go. And I know the Jets would be that suitable dance partner with certain scenarios and giving them multiple first round picks. And here we go. But I think to me, it's all a smokescreen. It really is. It's a smokescreen. And I think when it comes April 24th, the pick is in, it's a pretty much foregone conclusion that it's going to be Fernando Mendoza, the number one overall draft pick, to the Raiders. And the Raiders finally had their franchise quarterback. They had their franchise quarterback. Now, if you want to sit there and say, well, let's go through this anyway, just for the sake of content and the discussion, okay, fine. So let's say tomorrow the Raiders all of a sudden have an interest of trading the number one draft pick. So your next logical follow-up would be, what's the draft capital? What can they realistically get? Okay, well, here you go. So if you look at different publications, the Houston Texans said, we're not getting rid of CJ Stroud. But even though the GM said trading him is utterly ridiculous, when a GM comes out and speaks glowingly, when your boss says you're the best worker they ever employed, sometimes that means you're about to get your pink slip. So let's just say Houston. So, okay, then what would the Raiders get, right? So if Houston gets the first round pick, all right, what else? I mean, you got to throw something else in there, because I'm going to give you 2026 first round pick, number 28. I'm going to give you 2027 first round pick. I'm going to give you maybe a player or two, maybe the edge rusher, Hunter. Now, do they get back Crosby? I don't know. Again, what about Arizona? Arizona's got an issue with their quarterback in Kyler Murray. So I believe some of these teams that I'm giving you with the overhaul, like If the Cardinals want that number one draft pick, then guess what? They're going to figure out a way. I'll throw you Murray. I'll throw you an offensive player, first round draft pick, number 3, by the way, and 2027. He's going to command multiple first round draft picks and players. And players. Like Minnesota. Do we know that Minnesota is high on JJ McCarthy? So we're just playing that game, and I'm taking you down the rabbit hole. You don't have to follow me. But the reason I bring it up is because if we want to talk about them being hardliners and not wanting to give up that draft pick, then I also have to give you the flip side of that. And let's just say, for argument's sake, they are looking to move the number one pick. All right, fast approaching 4, quick timeout. We'll clean it up on the other side. Keep it locked in on a Monday. All right, fast approaching 4 o'clock on a Monday edition of On Cue. Don't forget, we are on our YouTube channel, Rumble Millions. That's our 1029 FM The Game, part of the Coastal Sports Digital Network. Download the AUDACY app. We're also on Kicks as well. You can check out the channel, Talka Talka. Get social with me. Very easy to do. At Rich Q on Q, X and IG, TikTok, Rich Q on a mic. Like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let me squeeze in a couple. Chimes in from Florida. Wants to talk a little NFC East right now. Q, how would you handicap it? I would go Eagles, Dallas, Giants, Washington. What say you? Eagles, obviously, clearly the best team. Washington, number 2. I'm sorry, Dallas, number 2. Well, you know what? Depending upon the moves, Washington can be right there. I think Washington just stubbed their toe. Jaden Daniels got hurt. They took a step back. They overachieved last year, 2 seasons ago. And the Giants, I still think, are pretty much the 4th best team in the division. I really do. I believe they're the 4th best team. Sal in Baltimore chimes in Q. Let's talk a little Ravens flock. Let's do it. I know you mentioned Cincinnati with the 10.5. Ultimately, how you look at that division right now. So Pittsburgh's taking a step back, bringing back Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to be a very good team. You might get some shocking, surprising quarterback news when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. The fact that Watson is going to have a hand here. You still got Gabriel and Shador Sanders on the roster. That makes for a very interesting offseason for the Cleveland Browns. Cincinnati just needs to figure out a way to fix their defense. And I think they'll be a playoff team. And then you have Baltimore. And Baltimore had a bad bounce late in the season. Baltimore had some bad losses late in the season. The Patriots game was brutal. They got swept by the Steelers. Both those games were close. They lost the first one 27-22, and then the rookie kicker shanks a field goal late. On the road, if they would have won that, they win the division, and they get in the playoffs. So we talked about some of these teams that major offseason, right? The window of opportunity. Baltimore is one of those teams. Jose chimes in. Q, Bucks. Let's go. Let's talk a little Bucks ball. 10.5 to 11 wins. I know that's what Vegas might have Tampa Bay at 10.5. I think it's a product of a bad division. I'll tell you this too. I think the Saints are going to be vastly improved. I really do. This was a team that won 6 games. And if we go back a little bit, the start to the season was brutal. They did nothing offensively against Arizona. Then they had to play San Fran. Then they played the defending Super Bowl champs on the road, Seattle. They had to go to Buffalo on the road. They started off 0-4. They got the win against the Giants, and the Saints were a 1-8 team. They were 1-8, and they proceeded to then win 5 out of their last 8 to close out the season. So they did a hell of a job late. And it also, there's a lot of sentiment that Tyler Schoen is their quarterback. And they want to ride with this kid. The Saints might be a sleeper team next season in a division that's really not that good. I'm not going to suggest the Saints are going to flip the script and do what the Bears did, or even Carolina, which won 8-9 games. But I can see the Saints 6-8. Sure. I can see them much more competitive. They had a lot of injuries too. A lot of injuries. Olave, Tippin, Johnson, Banks, Kamara. They had a bunch of injuries. They had a bunch of, second and third string guys that were banged up. So you get a healthy squad. And I'll tell you this right now, I think they can make things very interesting in the NFC South. I really do. All right, fast approaching 4 o'clock. As I mentioned later on in the week, a little more baseball talk. Let me give you the night in the NBA for those that don't like to talk the association. Rockets and the Wizards. Rockets are laying 14.5. Celtics and the Bucks. That'll be an interesting one. That's on NBA TV. Boston with a 2.5 point spread in that one. Denver on the road against arguably one of the worst teams in the NBA. The Jazz are so bad. I mean, it was so bad over the weekend. You got the Jazz and the Pelicans, and the Jazz lost to the Pelicans. They've actually lost 2 straight to the Pelicans. The Jazz, everyone knows they're tanking. They're 18-42. They're a bad basketball team. And then you got the Clippers and the Warriors. I'll probably lock in a little bit to the Celtics and the Bucks. Heavier night in the association tomorrow. Sixers back at it at home against San Antonio, coming off that loss against the Knicks. Knicks do not play. No, tomorrow they play the Raptors, I think. Yeah, the Knicks on the road tomorrow against Toronto. They'll be a slight favorite in that game. Knicks playing really good basketball. Defensively, I like what I'm seeing. They won 2 straight. They won 4 out of 5. Starting to ratchet up a little bit. 39-22. They're going to push the Boston Celtics in the Atlantic Division. So we'll talk a little more NBA later on in the week. Jonathan Marshall is going to join me in his weekly spot, which we will do every week, talk association. March Madness right around the corner. How about St. John's? How about the whiteout in Patino? St. John's absolutely dismantled Villanova, beat them by 32. Yeah, brutal, brutal, brutal if you are a Villanova fan. So March Madness right around the corner. We'll get to the bubble watch, if you will. Duke right now, the top seed in the entire nation. They are number 1. Arizona's number 2. So you got a light night in college basketball. Duke and NC State. Duke's laying about 9.5 to 10. I think it'll close at 10. Iowa State on the road against Arizona. That's going to be a good game. I'm actually leaning towards Iowa State with the points, plus 8.5 in that game. Arizona's number 2. Duke's number 1. Top 2 teams in the nation. So we'll get into a little more college hoops as well as the NBA with Jonathan Marshall. All right, 4 o'clock straight up. Got to start wrapping it up on a Monday edition. Good stuff on the comments on X. Tomorrow, back in the saddle. A little rapid fire as well. Got to travel later on in the week. We'll have John Bueller on Friday, Lloyd Vance as well, Larry Henry on the soccer circuit, Jonathan Marshall on the NBA, Steve Gardner on baseball. We also, as I mentioned, a couple more platforms you're going to be finding us. We're going to work different shows in, especially with the dog days of summer coming up and a lot more travel with the hoops for myself. But if you like the content, always keep it locked in, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate all of my sponsors, Three Brooks Bourbon, Get Ready with Tea, Fresh Roasted Coffee, Pliable, and of course, our good friends over at SR 1029 FM The Game, Coastal Sports Digital Network. Find them on the AUDACY app, and you can check me out Monday to Friday on Q, as well as Overseas Dimes and the Combat Sports Podcast, Double Job, which we had a wonderful conversation with Jovan Woodard, who's in action in 2 weeks. A rising super bantam. That not a bad card we called over the weekend too in Baltimore. 14 fights, got a couple of fast knockouts, but you had some regional belts on the line, which is always interesting to kind of talk about, dissect, and call. So we'll recap those cards that just transpired over the weekend later on the latest edition of Double Jab. You can get that all on all the podcast forms as well as on Q. If you missed today's show, the audio is going to be up there on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. All right, back in the saddle manana. You guys have a wonderful sports Monday. As always, keep it locked in. Be safe, be sound. I'm Rich Quinones. Appreciate you guys joining us for a Monday edition, a Man Up Monday edition of On Q. We will do it again tomorrow. Be safe, be sound. Hasta luego, meu dia.